Women's IP World. Women's IP World. Women's IP World.
Welcome to episode 4 of season 4 from the Women's IP World Annual Podcast, a podcast series that's shining a spotlight on women in intellectual property. I'm your host, Michele Katz, and I'm the co-founding partner of the law firm Advitam IP, which in Latin means intellectual property for life. We are based out of the US in Chicago. Me and my firm are hosting this podcast on behalf of Northens Media PR and Marketing Limited, based out of the UK in London. They are the publishers of the Women's IP World Annual and the Global IP Matrix magazine. The 2024 edition of the Women's IP World Annual can be found digitally at www.womensipworld.com. Again, that's www.womensipworld.com. And you can listen to the annual as well on your favorite podcast app. And if a hard copy is more your speed, stop by Northens Media booth at most major conferences. We have a returning guest today, Claudette Vernot, director and attorney at law at Estrategia Jurídica in Colombia. Today, we're going to talk about anti-counterfeiting, or is it illicit trade, or is it anti-piracy? All of those terms were used in your article. Claudette, welcome. And are all of those terms, are they the same?
Hi, Michelle. Nice to talk to you again.
Likewise.
Regarding your question, I would say that is now the same. The evolution of the contraband and the counterfeiting make us a manager of portfolios and anti-contraband and smuggling programs to include everything in one pot called illicit trade. Because in the past, brand holders were talking only about contraband, other have issues of counterfeiting, but at the end, for the authorities, is illegal trade, and is what it really matters, and is what we are trying to accomplish now when we create protection program, and is put everything together on the fight against illegal trade. So we will fight the counterfeiting, we will fight the contraband, money laundering, fraud. So all these criminal offenses will be included in one concept, which is illegal trade.
Okay, so illegal trade is the umbrella, or illicit trade, that's the umbrella to cover what we used to just kind of call counterfeiting. Now we realize, that counterfeiting is not all the things. It's not money laundering necessarily, right? That's a separate category, but all of those separate things fall under the term illicit trade or illegal trade. Do we have that right?
Exactly, yeah. I think the concept of illegal trade answer the need of what's going on around the world. I mean, we are not talking about one jurisdiction, we're talking about all jurisdictions are having the same issue. And right now, it's not enough to only fight the counterfeiting, because for the authorities, and especially for the government, we are not only protecting a brand, but we are also protecting the government through contraband. When you fight money laundering, you are also protecting the government and the income of the government. So what it starts with counterfeiting ends with a huge problem for the governments. So that's why we arrived to a conclusion as lawyers, and when I say we, it's because most of the lawyers that work on IP will have this same situation. Perhaps you will find lawyers that will say, oh, we only do counterfeiting, we don't want to deal with criminal organizations that deals with money laundering, fraud, contraband. But then you are not really solving the main issue. I mean, you may just fight the counterfeiting, but if you are fighting a criminal organization, you will need then to bring a criminal lawyer that will fight the rest of the criminal offenses. And that's the trend. I think that most of the brand holders are having issues of illegal trade and not necessarily only of counterfeiting.
So in your firm, do you have a close alliance with criminal attorneys so that you can offer specifically in your firm, for example, I mean, it's a different view of these strategic alliances than it used to be, right? Where we kind of had everything in house.
Yes.
Or are you handling some of this criminal work yourself?
No, we have criminal attorneys in our law firm, and
Mm-hmm.
we need to have them. Why? Because as I mentioned in the past, we start to have only a little word talking about counterfeiting. But when you see that the crime is transnational, I mean, we are not only talking about counterfeiters bringing a product to Colombia, but we are also talking about criminal organizations that are in China, work with the people in Panama, and then the product arrive in Colombia, and you are dealing with three different companies. And then you see that you are not only trying to solve the problem of the counterfeiting, but you have also the contraband, you have money laundering. Sometimes you have criminal organizations that give labor to minor people. You also have in the boats that arrive to Colombia, illegal immigration that is doing the job. So I would say that it's impossible to deal with a criminal organization that is not developing different criminal offenses. And for that reason, most of our cases in the law firm go to criminal judges because it will explain the importance of the cases.
But you see how this is a shift from how we used to handle cases, you know, maybe 20 years ago, even maybe 10 years ago, where we would have to bring in potentially, at least here in the US, maybe it would be different in Colombia, you know, essentially you're a full service for illicit trade as opposed to what we used to kind of advertise. I run my own law firm, right? Marketing is a part of it. And the way your career has gone so heavily into this area, there's definitely a shift, I feel like, than what it used to be like. Can you kind of take us a little bit through your career, and how you used to practice, how you got into this area, and then how you've shifted now to working side by side within your own firm with criminal attorneys.
Yeah, I think you're correct. I think the trend has been so important that make us change our way of working. For example, we used to do civil actions, but that was not enough. And then you start to see that the counterfeiter didn't have any obstacle in their activities. So what we start to do is, first of all, study the criminal cases and find that if we do investigation and we do, and it's what they do in the States. I think we learn a lot of investigation from our own clients that they were investigators and there's a like, but what we can do nothing here in Colombia, if in the United States we can do a lot of things with all the evidence that we have. And I think that was like the door that they opened, and we start to say yes. We have very strong laws, and if you are doing a criminal activity, why we cannot stop you? So in that sense, we start to work a lot with the authorities, with the police, for example. The police had a unit at that time was general investigation within the police unit, and they start to work with us. I think we were the first law firm in Colombia that start to do like criminal law regarding IP It's not that we didn't have the disposition or the citations or the law, because we had the criminal law that described the criminal offense. But the thing is that the lawyers that were practicing IP, they were not criminal lawyers. So that's we have the law, but we didn't have like any activity. So I think that yes, we were inspired on the U.S. law and the investigators that they sent to Colombia. I'm talking about 1998, 1999, when we were first investigators from Levi's that we were the first ones to meet, and they were doing great things in the States, you know, and you are a lawyer there, so you know the evidence that investigators gathered, and they work together with the authorities, and they have a very strong relation with the authorities. So we start to say, well, we have to do the same, and we have to have our own investigators, because I mean, we have to be honest, and lawyers cannot be investigators. So, I mean, we can be very good lawyers, but I think it's very difficult when a lawyer said, "I'm a very good investigator." So, like, I don't think so. We can try. We can
Stay in
try.
your lane. Stay in your
Yeah,
lane, as we say.
exactly.
Okay, well, hold that thought, because I definitely want to talk more and connect our conversation to the article you wrote in the 2024 edition. We're going to take a quick break and we'll continue our discussion as soon as we are back.
The Women's IP World Annual 2025 calls upon remarkable women in the IP and innovation sectors to join our prestigious global network. We invite you to be among only 3 women representing your country in our 6th annual edition, set to be published on International Women's Day, March 2025. If you are interested in elevating your personal and firm's profile on a global scale, whether through a featured profile, sharing thought leadership, or promoting your intellectual property law services, this is the perfect opportunity. We would love to hear from you. For more information, please email us at info@womensipworld.com or call +44 0203 813 0457.
Welcome back. So I want to dive into your article. It's very related, of course, to the conversation we had before the break. Your article says that governments' efforts and capabilities cannot provide adequate attention to all the problems of a community to fight and our counterfeiting, you know, and the rest, basically the illicit trade. All right. So my question to you is, what is the solution then? If, you know, we rely on government efforts and capabilities.
I think we're talking about trends, and again, in the past, the authorities were not too open to work with associations or to work with brand holders. And I think it's because, not because they didn't want to, but they were afraid of how this relation could be established. And I think that now, I would say 20 years later, I mean, the collaboration is the main factor. And today, I would say that the trend is that the authorities will always request from brand holders their support on training, support on logistic and capacity that the brand holders could afford. They always rely on the experts to recognize the product. So more and more we see that the customs authority, the civil police, the criminal prosecutor's office, they all rely on the possibility of the brand holders to assist and to help and to bring knowledge to their entity. So I think now it's working pretty good, and I would say I see this trend in all the regions, with very few exceptions where you can find countries that they don't want brand holders to be there present and assistant because they believe that there's no transparency. But I think that once we are transparent and we just be there assisting the authority, things should be things should be working pretty good. So I think that's why I said government efforts needs also the efforts of the brand holder, will require also the efforts of associations that we know as INTA, CP, IPCA in the Caribbean, and all these associations that are permanently doing trainings to the authorities.
Yeah, I mean, you even have lawyers at private law firms doing trainings with customs agents, right, to help educate them on copyright, trademark, what's coming in, is it an infringement or a counterfeit, these sort of things, what can tip you off, right? Because if you're a counterfeiter, for example, and you are coming from one location, then you go to another location before the US, for example, only just the prior location is what may show up in your documentation, not where you originated. So sometimes that idea of the chain of custody, but as far as destination, how do how does these agents, and they're, overworked, underpaid, right? As far as, all these shipments are coming in, these very large containers going through, how do they know what to focus on, and what actually constitutes, for example, a counterfeit? They need education too. So you mentioned organizations, and I know that you were very involved, chair, I believe, right, of the INTA Anti-Counterfeiting Committee. Organizations themselves are also stepping in to help governments and help support their efforts. Can you talk about your experience on the committee and how you and the committee worked with governments, for education, all the things to try to help to reduce the amount of illegal trade?
Yes, I think that the role of the associations is very important, and the role that I had as chair of 9 jurisdiction in INTA is evidence of that. I mean, each jurisdiction, I mean, we're talking about 350 volunteers helping in all jurisdiction training, not only doing trainings on the brands, recognition of original and fake product, but also on legislation and for example, on how you can attack counterfeiting on internet, and a lot of education that is needed to these people. My main goal is education, and you mentioned. I mean, if we do education of the customs, of the police, of the different investigators that work for the different government agencies, then we start to have very good results. People think about only educating, for example, the kids and universities. We also do that in INTA. See, as you know, we have the Unreal campaign that goes to different schools, universities, and I think that's also part of the program of education. And as you know, the government entities has a lot of rotation. So sometimes brand holders say, but last year we trained already that port or that city, and then I say, well, I will, I would like to to really think that the main officer is still there, but there is a lot of rotation. So you have to train every single year, and you have to go to those ports every single year, like you do the trainings in Chicago or in Miami. I mean, you have to go every single year, and sometimes you do 2 or 3 times per year because you will not have the same agents of the port in Miami on 2025. So the same will apply for all the jurisdictions. So the important thing here is the role of the volunteers, and we have amazing people that do that for fun, and because it became like a passion, no? Like more and more you do things, then you feel better. So all this is very productive. I mean, not, and I will say not only for the brand holder, But we, as lawyers, we have to think in our governments and our countries. So we are helping somehow. No, it's not just question of find someone to pay our bills, but also I think we have like a social a activity that we have to produce somehow.
Yeah, so between turnover, as you mentioned, and also just refreshers. I mean, even at least in my state of Illinois, we have continuing legal education is required, a certain amount of credits, and it's audited. We, have to make sure we may in certain categories that we have to check off. It's something the reoccurring the annual or multiple times a year, even those that stay on could use a refresher. And with new technologies, there's new schemes. I was really involved in IACC. For a number of years, I was involved in that organization, and we would have speakers from around the world. I remember one in particular came from China, and part of it, what he was talking about, is changing the culture. For people to stop buying counterfeits. There was a certification system that stores would put a sticker on their storefront window so that people, when they walked in, would know that they've been vetted and all the goods provided in the store are legitimate. That is a struggle we face also when we're just, we're trying to protect society, right? So there's the part of intellectual property that at its core is to protect society. Of course, there's the side of the rights holder as well, but to protect society, and there needs to be a culture shift, and there has been to some degree. I feel like, anecdotally, I don't know if there's studies out there showing that, but I specifically remember this speaker talking about that shift taking place in China. Whereas before it was, no, you want the knockoff. It was all about getting the knockoff, right? And then it was a shift to no, just authentic goods. So that's also a struggle. And through education, when people understand where that money gets funneled to criminal organizations, they may think twice.
Yeah, I think that in the past, people didn't think about the effect of the criminal activity and how the criminal organization gets the money. But now, I mean, more and more, for example, in Colombia, is very important that we show that all the money from counterfeiting and contraband helps criminal organization to pay drug abroad. So all that factor then became more complicated, and then the authorities are more interested in the counterfeiting and contraband now because they understand that the main operation is that through these criminal activities, we are seeing a lot of money laundering and payment of drugs abroad.
And weapons.
Yeah, and weapons, exactly. So if they don't do something, especially, for example, the traffic with the specific countries, then they're doing nothing. So when Panama doesn't do their job, then we have to do or convince authorities in Colombia to do it. Or when in Mexico, the container is coming in transit and the authorities doesn't stop the container in Mexico and arrive to Colombia. So all that communication among lawyers, investigators, authorities is a transnational work that needs to be done. So again, we are not talking about something simple. More and more counterfeiters are becoming more sophisticated with the technology that you mentioned. So that make us as lawyers to work in new strategies and study more possibilities on how to stop them. So that's why the main work with agencies is very important, and not only local agencies, but also international agencies. I'm talking about Homeland Security, Customs Border Protection, and all the any entities as Interpol, Europol. All this is something that we didn't think in the past, but now there is nothing can be done. We don't work in cooperation with all these agencies, governments, associations and so forth.
So, in your line of work, is there a sort of mantra that you've adopted that maybe that you could share with us?
I will say that I don't know if you can call mantra. When you say mantra, I'm thinking about more the spiritual part. But I will say that important is to be transparent with the authorities to get their collaboration. And I think that once you are transparent and you make them understand that we are not only helping a brand holder, but as you really and clear mentioned, the consumer and also the government because they stop like receiving money from taxes and from all the commercial operation that is completely illegal. So I think that more you transmit the message that everyone wins and we are doing something for the society, I think is the main issue. I mean, we're not only protecting a brand, which is, I mean, we don't go just to protect the brand, we go beyond that, and it's what we have to send this message.
Yeah, it's the bigger picture, the global picture. Claudette, thank you for coming back to talk with me today and letting us shine a light on you and your expertise in this particular, very specific, and very important area of intellectual property law. To our listeners, please like, follow, share with your friends and colleagues, but also feel free to send comments and questions. Hope to see everyone soon at a upcoming in-person conference. Thank you all.
Thank you, Michelle.
The Women's IP World. The Women's IP World.
You have been listening to the Women's IP World podcast, hosted by Michele Katz from Advitam IP in Chicago, USA, on behalf of Northlands Media PR and Marketing Limited in the United Kingdom.
The Women's IP